So I was reading through the very first book in the Old Testament, which some of you know is called Genesis. First book of Genesis, there's like this creation. Second book of Genesis, there's even more creation. Third chapter, it all kind of just gets screwed up. Okay, and in the third chapter, one of the things that God said is work's going to be really hard for you. Remember that part of that whole story? Yep. Work's going to be, he said, the ground will lead to bring out thorns and thistles, you know? And so I started thinking about it, and I was like, okay, so before that, so remember back in the first and second chapter, there was work. So we get this idea sometimes like, oh, work's, like a necessary evil. No. Work is like a beautiful gift. You get to be creative. You get to help people. In the world that we live in, you can create something. You can give it to somebody who really wants it. They can give you money, which you really want, and you're both happy. That's unbelievable, right? By the way, you'll hear a different version of that often from our capital, like folks in Washington, oh, the evils of business and stuff like that. Like, you stop the business world, the whole world in 4 hours is it like cities burning. I'm telling you, like the fact that we have this beautiful transaction where people can get something they want and you can get something you want. Like, for example, you're all here at this event, which is a transaction. I'm sure you're happy you're here. Yeah? Yes, I'm happy you're here too. Everybody wins. It's wonderful how that works. Good for you, good for me, good for the economy, okay? So when you look back at the beginning, work was a joy. It was just this wonderful, peaceful, joyful, creative experience where you could express what God has given to you, because essentially work is expressing the nature of God. So for example, God's a creator. So if in your work you create, you're expressing the true nature of God. So if you're an author, or you do videos, or you teach, or you do social media, or anything that's creative, artistic, or anything like that, you're expressing the nature of God. God's an innovator. So if you innovate or create things like John, like Robert, if you're an inventor, you're expressing that nature of God. God is a restorer. If you sell insurance, you reflect the restorative nature of God. Now, I know insurance salespeople get a bad rap these days. I had a house burned down. The tenant decided to cook some steaks in the backyard and cook the house. And everybody was fine, except for my house. I got a check. It was like a week and a half later. I got a 6-figure check from USA. I was like, man, thank you for that insurance guy that sold me that policy. That reflected God's restorative nature. God's a provider, so if your work isn't providing, God's a teacher, so if your work isn't teaching. So true work expresses the true nature of God. Go back to the beginning of the book, and you find that work was a joy. Go back to the third chapter of the book, then work became hard. And what I realized is if work could be hard, I could also do the other way. And so you just have a choice which world you decide to live in. You can be in that Genesis 2 world or the Genesis 3 world. The Genesis 3 world is hard. The printers don't work. The things don't work. The teams argue with each other. Deals don't come through. Money doesn't find its way through. It's hard, and it's a struggle. And some of you are sold on the idea of business being a struggle. The first and most important thing is to start by being an observer of your own thoughts and words. When you start, most people aren't even aware of those things. When you start to be aware, that's crazy. The second thing next to awareness is this implementation of the change, right? So aware and change. Then what you start to do is you start to realize all the things you're saying and have said to the people around you. It's so close to coming out for me to say, what is your problem? Right? What's wrong with you? But the assumption there is there's a problem. The assumption is something's wrong with them. What I'm training them to do is go, oh, there's something wrong with me, right? So what I told my son the other day, this is my 13-year-old, I said, Dean, this is not who you are. You're a smart kid, and you make good decisions. And the way that you're behaving right now is not in line with who you are. It's essentially a similar message, but it's based in the truth of who he is. And the truth is, he doesn't always make good decisions. But that's his identity. You're a smart kid, and you make good decisions. Because if it's not completely fleshed out in his behavior, at the very least, that kind of thinking will begin to create that self in the behavior. Do you see the difference in that? It's essentially a similar conversation with a little bit of a different thing. This is the roadmap for a negative contract. So the first step, and some of you experienced this when you did your God Talks, is you had this moment where you go, oh, I had this event in my life. I had a bankruptcy. I had trauma when I was a kid. I told you a story about that. I had some kind of abuse. I had a bankruptcy. I had a divorce, right? It's a life event. And with the life event comes along a bunch of messages. A lot of times you don't choose to listen to them. Like, for example, with a divorce, with that comes a lot of things about you. Things people said and things people implied that you thought they said, right? But there's the self-worth that's attached to that. There's a lot of things that go down the road with that. Work with a lot of people in that category. Oftentimes, there's something that you say to yourself or that's said to you. If you agree with those things, it becomes a what? A negative contract. Okay, so like here's an example. This is a true example, a different name. So life event. Dwayne did his best, but he went bankrupt when the market crashed in 2008. That's the scenario. Nothing's happened so far other than exactly what happened on the real world. But what happened next was Dwayne says, okay, I'll never be successful. Now, when someone says, I'll never be successful, where are they saying that? They're saying it in their conscious mind, and it's heading where? To your subconscious, right? So the subconscious goes, okay, I'll never be successful. And for the next 10 years, Dwayne's broke. He becomes Grand Central Station for money because the subconscious goes, I'll never be successful. I don't know if that's good or bad because I don't care about morality. I don't know if it's good for Dwayne or not good for Dwayne. I'm the subconscious. I'm just doing what he tells me to do, which is I'll never be successful. I've had clients of mine, finally after 3 years, they had a TV show on Animal Planet, never made any money. They came to me, and like I do, I help people make money. So I know this is a lot of metaphysical and spiritual stuff, but for those of you in the front row or close to the front row who have worked with me one-on-one, you know, my most striking gift is my ability to make money appear in businesses, okay? So they showed up, and I usually could just wave magic wand, make money show up, and we worked together for a year, and nothing showed up. And we worked together for the next year, and nothing showed up. And I started to feel like, what was wrong with me? And then out of nowhere, one of the two team members, she called and she emailed and said, could I talk to you? And I'm like, oh no. And I got on the phone just with her, and she said, I don't know if you're aware of this, but my partner has these issues with being successful. She feels very unworthy, and I've tried to help her through it, but every time we almost have made money, she always sabotages for the last 2 years, and now I'm going to go out on my own. I said, well, fine, I'll coach you then. You know? And then she went on to be successful. Well, I didn't know. I was blaming myself. I didn't know that she was sabotaging almost every single deal because she had a worth thing going on. So if your subconscious mind is like, I'll never be successful, well, guess what? You'll never be. Okay, now, let's reverse this. On a positive contract, this is where this comes from. The first comes from some trauma or some life event that becomes a word that you turn into a thought that turns into actions that turns into a result, or a word that goes into your conscious mind, into a statement, into your subconscious mind. The way to unwind it is to turn your superconscious mind on, ask a question to who? God, get an answer. Dwayne comes and does a God talk. And when he writes down what's true, prosperity is coming to me every day in a new way. So Dwayne says, I reject the lie that what? I'll never be successful, and I choose instead to believe that prosperity is coming to me in a new way every day. So he ranks a positive contract. I choose to believe that prosperity is coming to me in a new way every day. His subconscious mind says, fine, that's our new belief system. It opens up the possibility that there's deals coming in, and check it out. Dwayne closed a $109,000 deal in the next week. Dwayne's friend said, man, you're so lucky. That is not luck. That is simply processing things into your mind so that they show up in your life. I could sit in this chair right here and I could try to manifest a football, but that doesn't actually happen in real life. If I wanted to get a football, what would I have to do? I would have to say, I need a football, and I could go get one. It's just not how things actually work. People will talk sometimes about the universe, and I love the universe. Don't get me wrong, it's home. But I don't talk to the universe any more than I talk to the door. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't go like, door, could you give me $1 million? Door, please give me now, just because the universe is big, right? It doesn't mean it's going to give it to you, right? So we're just talking about all I'm talking about is how things actually work. You have a conversation with God. You connect with divine intelligence. You get an answer. You recode your conscious mind into your subconscious, and then it works. Fundamentally, it's so simple because it is simple. It's not even that hard. I can explain it in like 9 minutes.